Greetings, fellow Earthlings, and welcome to the Amateur Conversationalist. I am John Petersen, and today, episode 3, I am joined by my brother from another mother, Nakasuchi. Welcome, Nakasuchi.
Hey, what's up, y'all? What's up, John?
So, now, as I've done the first 2 episodes, and this is what I'm trying to do with this channel is, anybody could have the artist formerly known as the Raging Atheist on to rail against theism or to talk about his political leanings, and I want to try and introduce people to folks in the community and talk about some things that maybe not everybody knows about them. And so today we're going to talk to Nakasuchi about his time as a slam poet. And he, of course, continues to write poetry and write. And as I've often said, I think that a lot of his prepared videos oftentimes come off as like a flavor of poetry, that his delivery and the way he reads his scripting when he does the prepared videos. So why don't you just take a couple minutes, Nakasuchi, and talk about how you got into slam poetry and what that part of your life was like.
Yeah, man. It's been a while since I've actually talked about this. We were kind of talking about it before the stream, and yes, I am starting to get my voice back, chat. It's coming slowly, but it's coming. But yeah, so I've always kind of written. I got this fly is attacking me. I've always been a writer since I was 5 years old. My dad still has my first story. It was about 3 robots, and I was writing stories before I ever began reading, and just fascinated with writing. It's always been my passion. I've always had this brain that's always been able to just see visions very clearly. It's how I taught myself how to draw. It's how I've always written. So, I've always had writing, and I've always been a writer. It's just naturally. Naturally in school, I was just really good at English. And that might surprise people that have followed me and know my pronunciation problems, but that's more of a, being raised in the North and the South at the same time kind of thing. But so as I got into my teenager years, and, I'm talking about this in my atheist story, I started having some deep issues, drug abuse. I lost my ability to play sports, which was my ticket to, whatever school I wanted to go to, my ticket to the future, basically. Football and basketball I was really good at. That was taken away due to a sports injury. And I got hooked on a lot of drugs and went through a lot of shit that most people just don't go through. And I think that most slam poets had that happen to them. A lot of slam poets, especially back in my day, I haven't been to a slam in quite a while, but back in my day, a lot of slam poets were comedic, but even their comedy poems would have deep-rooted meaning and usually based off of some tragic instance in their life. And I think that as, me and my best friend at the time, we were pretty much going from writing journalism stories and fictional stories to writing poetry. We just happened to meet in Kalamazoo, Michigan, a slam poet. And we were just starting to do coffee house scenes at the time, really starting to perform our poetry, and we didn't know what slam poetry was. But once we went to that slam, it kind of changed everything, and it changed the way both of us wrote and the way both of us performed. We started taking the performance a lot more seriously. Back then, you would never see me reading off of a page, and it was very dramatic and theater, and we got into that scene, and we were still doing heavy drugs and being crazy and just writing about our life experiences, and that's pretty much how I got into it. And it took about 6 months for me to make a team.
And so, do you remember the first time that you did a slam poetry competition?
Yes, I won it. I did my poem Wisdom, which I usually can still have memorized after even 20 years later. It was the first poem that I ever performed in a slam, and it got me into the second round. I got perfect tens, standing ovation, just like, Saul gets in the movie Slam. And I just watched that movie, and I just been introduced to Saul Williams, and it just really, I don't know, it solidified that I had something special, and it really made me focus on writing poetry instead of fiction. And I did. I wrote poetry for about probably the next 7 or 8 years without writing any fiction at all.
And so when you talk about your writing, you're not just a poet. You spoke of your very first story that your father has, and about the 3 robots. So you've always, written stories as well. Yeah.
And in fact, before I started YouTube, I had spent 7 years building a world and writing my first novel. I think it's really good. I haven't tried to publish it. I haven't tried to do anything with it because I started YouTube and I've been too busy. And since I started YouTube, I've slowly been writing my first atheist book. It'll be under Nakasuchi, not my real name, which if I ever publish my novel, or I've actually written several novels, but if I publish the one that I think is ready to be published, it would be under my white name. I like to call it my white name.
Your white name.
Yeah.
You're talking about the name that Matt Powell can't keep out of his mouth.
Yeah. He really likes my white Christian name.
All right, real quick, just to shout out to the live chat, want to welcome the Atheist Rationale, Tartan Snowflake, Z Postate, Miss Angelica 1416, Godless Galaxy, Jared Whitaker, and Dragnot Silvis in the house. Thanks for coming by, Drag. He says he linked this in the Discord, so maybe we'll get some more people here. Hey, why don't we step aside from the conversation for a moment, and could you share with us, one of your poems?
Yeah, I'm going to try to remember Wisdom. I haven't practiced it. Sometimes I remember it completely, sometimes I don't. But yeah, I'll try to remember Wisdom, and hopefully my throat will let me actually speak it directly or correctly. But this was a poem I wrote when I was coming out of religion and going into spirituality. I was deep into my Native American spirituality at the time I wrote this. I believe it was Native American. I might have still been a Taoist going into my Native American spirituality. But this, I still clearly have this God figure in my life, although I would say it's probably different than most people at this moment when I wrote this poem. And it's called Wisdom, and it's basically a reflection of just growing as a human being. So if I can remember the first line, wisdom is the yearning for all things, knowing that those little flings in the long run are what stings. You see, I've tried to achieve it on so many levels, and in the process I fought too many devils, but in spite of all the rebels, I move on. Reading books, the daily chapter, and escape from today's disaster, my father observes with cold laughter, but sneers from that day after. I feel I might need to see a skin grafter, but I move on. And I lost it.
Oh, that's okay.
No, I'll get it back.
Yeah, take your time. That's the way it works with me too. You got to remember the first line, and then it.
Well, it's been so long since I've actually recited it from memory. I probably shouldn't have started with that one, but it's probably my most important poem. Let me get it back.
So, while Nakasuchi works,
I can't get the next line. But go ahead.
That's okay. Well, feel free to open your book and share something else. I understand exactly what you're saying. And to go back, to what we were talking about a moment ago, and you say you've written these novels and other things, and you've never really gone and tried, to get the novels published. But have you had other things, like as far as your poetry goes, or maybe short stories that you have had published?
Oh, I've had several things published. I've won several contests. I had a contest, back in '99, I think, that landed me a contract with Walt Disney. It's a long story. I'm going to be going into all of this stuff in my atheist story. But I essentially spent the bus money my father gave me to, I think it was my dad, it might have been my mom. The bus money one of my parents gave me to go down to Florida and sign this contract. I spent it on acid and mushrooms and mescaline.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, one of the great fuck ups of my life. But I've won several competitions. I've been published in I don't even know if the magazine's still around. It was called Realms of Fantasy magazine. And it was basically a starting point for fantasy writers to get short stories out. I think I published there 15 or 20 times. Several national poetry awards. I'm in several, what's the name of those books where you have a shit ton of poets and they make a poetry book out of it? I can't remember it right now. Yeah, and it was my life and it was my future, and I fucked it all up because I was in the middle of a serious drug addiction. I was no longer doing pills, which had landed me in a lot of drug rehabs leading up to my teens and after I hurt my ankle. But I was doing a lot of psychedelics and a lot of ecstasy and just being a really stupid young 20-year-old who thought he was better than he was. I thought I was famous. I thought I had this bright future ahead of me and it was guaranteed. I still believed in God. So it was pretty much like I was just walking the path that God laid ahead of me. And all I really had to do was be me. And that was the mentality that I had. And why I was able to fuck everything up so thoroughly, I think, is because I wasn't doing it for myself. I thought it was all preordained.
Now, you talk about the competitions that you won. Now, is that typically what happens when you win a competition? That part of winning it is that your
anthology.
Win a competition that your poem is then published in some kind of publication. Yeah,
it's usually a major national publication. And usually it's not just the winners. The winners get prizes and money and usually some guarantee of future publication. It all really depends on the contest. So like if you're a writer, then you know the writer's marketplace is your best friend. So you're going to be going through all of these addresses and they'll have a whole section on contests. And if you're a starting writer, really this is how most starting writers get their start. You hit these contests, you try to win, and even if you place in the top 20 out of thousands upon thousands of submissions, you're going to get recognition. And if you can actually land a prize, well, that even goes a long way. And it's really, really hard to land a prize. You're usually competing against writers coming out of Ivy League schools, really trying to start their journalism careers or their writing careers. It's a very cutthroat business. It's what really turned me off, and I was able to just like, fuck it, let's go do some drugs and, live this party life that I lived all through my 20s. Like right up until I had my child when I was 33, I lived a fairly stringent, just fuck it life. I'm going to do what I do and I'm going to have fun doing it. And it fucked up everything that I've ever tried to do.
Now, as far as slam poetry goes, there's a distinction, and please, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's a distinction between slam poetry and then the type of poetry where people are going back at one another, dissing each other. Like, what's? Well,
yeah, that's battle rap, and I've always said that a lot of rap music kind of has that poetry feel to me. I think that's why I'm drawn to rap music more than most other music. I love all music, but I think rap is probably my favorite just because of that poetic element to it. if you go back to like Tupac Shakur, his whole thing was telling stories from the street that he saw as an artist, because he was an artist from a young age. He was one of those natural artists. A lot of people might not realize or know the history of Tupac, but he went to some of the best art schools you can go to. So I've always been, there's that form, and like slam poetry is different than just normal poetry. Like if you're trying to write poetry and put it into a book, for one, it's really hard to make any money out of it. So if you're going to do it, you're basically doing it for yourself. For two, you want to write a book of poems that's going to make some sense and have some prose and grammar and the correct English, to where when you're doing slams, it's not about none of that. It's not about prose, so to speak. You still want to use prose, but you have a lot of poetic leeway to change words, to make words be able to rhyme, or however you're going to do it. And it's more of a performance than a written piece. Like the written piece is very, very important. But if you're going to be on that stage, and if you're going to be really serious about trying to make a slam team and go to nationals, then you better have that performance down. That's the most important thing. You better be slow with your delivery and powerful with your delivery. And it takes a lot of time to get there.
So when you talk about, the type of poetry that you do, what distinguishes your style from other slam poets?
Well, my style was basically, most of my slam poetry is very hip hop influenced. So at that time, this was back, after Vanilla Ice, before Eminem. Like I remember when Eminem first came out, I was doing the slam circuits, and it was a major deal back then when he came out. But slam is really where you started to get white people to really practice rhyming. And I think that's what differentiated. I was part of that subset of the slam poet of the time. We had Saul Williams. If you're on my Discord or on AR's Discord, I was posting that shit all night because I had an odd night last night. A rare slip into despair. But, so I molded myself after Saul, to where I didn't want to try to be Saul Williams, but I just wanted to have that cadence, that rhyme to the reason. So, to where he goes in completely different elements of philosophy that I never really cared about. I have always been more focused on just telling the story of my life or the lives of the friends that I had around me. I think that's kind of what set me apart. And now more and more people did it after I did, and did it very successfully and probably better than I did. But I think I was one of the first that was doing it back then. And my name back then was Marty R, something that I created and stole from Black Star, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, I got pretty known for that hip hop storytelling thing that was slam poetry back in the mid 90s, probably late 90s, early 2000s.
And so what got you away from doing it? I mean, because it sounds like it was a really big part of your life. What caused you to set that aside? I
couldn't write different poems anymore. They all sounded the same. I was saying the same shit, and I got more disinterested with trying to create political change using poetry, and more into trying to get actually involved in politics. And it was in my late 20s when I really started to become involved with politics on a local level. And when I say involved with politics, I'm not saying I watch the news and I know a little bit about politics. I'm knocking on doors and making phone calls and working for the Democratic Party. So, it just really changed, and I started to get more serious about that. And then I wanted to really get back into writing books again. And I wrote my first novel. And, when you're writing a novel, your goal is not to write anything else. If you start writing other shit, there's a very good chance you won't finish your novel. So I just stopped writing poetry for a couple years.
And now, do you feel as if, now that you've, since you set it aside and now you're a little older, you've lived through some more life, do you feel like maybe you can regain your voice and maybe have something different to say?
Well, yeah, I part of my first atheist book is going to be a section of poetry that I've written that's dedicated to the anti-theist part of me being an atheist and coming out on YouTube as an atheist and being this raging atheist that I was. I wrote the poems when I was the raging atheist. And, I've been back and forth, like, should I take some of these poems out? Should I leave them in? But fundamentally, I think that they're part of the story, so I'm going to leave them in. But yeah, there's going to be a section of new poetry that I've been writing for about the last year that just fundamentally deals with the lack of any belief in a God and the impact that has from the society around you. That's going to be part of this first Nakasuchi book, whenever I finish it.
Yeah.
Excuse me. I am going to finish it, and I'm going to self-publish it. I'm not even going to try to do the route that I went before, because it's very demoralizing when the agents turn you down and they don't even read your shit.
Right, but the opportunities are out there to self-publish now, and
with this whole social media economy that we have now, growing a platform, getting your name out, I think self-publication is almost the way to go, because the work you put in is yours, and you're not selling your soul to this corporate entity that's trying to push a narrative. You can just be who you want.
Well, and I think there's like opportunities out there where you work with different companies, where you self-publish, and then you don't have to do like a normal publishing house would do, which would be to make a big, huge run of books, that sit on a shelf till people buy them. You wait till you get an order, and then the book is printed out and sent to them. I think I saw some, situations like that.
Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to Allie, because Allie's a writer, and we really haven't had this conversation yet. We've been talking about a slew of other shit, but I've been really meaning to talk to her about publication and how she does what she does, because I do. This has been my dream since I was a kid, and I have tons of shit that I've written over my life. I never throw anything away. I have every story I've ever written, pretty much, if I don't drop my coffee everywhere. And I have some really, really good stories, really, really good stories that I think that people will enjoy. So now that I'm older, I do care about getting it out there, and I do want to take it more seriously if I can find the time to do so.
A minute ago you were talking about the process when you write a book, that you don't want to bog your mind down with writing other things. You want to just focus on the book. And I remember a conversation you and I had about this maybe a couple months ago, and we were talking about how when you start to write something, this is what I experienced. I think at the time you agreed with me that, like, I start to write a story. I come up with an idea for a story, and maybe the first, few paragraphs, run off in my mind. And then when I start writing it, I get this sense of, wow, I can't wait to see how this ends, because the story just develops, it almost seemingly on its own. And like, especially like more so with the poetry than writing stories, it just seems like once your pen, and even with writing the stories too, but once your pen starts moving, and I write longhand, and I think you told me that's what you do too. I don't like to type. I like to, and
I write everything longhand first.
Yeah, and it almost seems like I don't know, it just pours out of my head and through the pen. There isn't even really like a thought process. Like I'm not stopping and going, okay, where should this story go now? It just seems to flow out of my brain. Is that how you kind of experience it too?
Yeah, and on both levels. So with my poetry, I usually go into poetry, and I have this like deep feeling inside that I feel like it needs to come out. And those are always my best slam poems, is when that happens, when I have this like just this urge, like I got to get something out of myself, and then it'll just pour onto the page. And I can usually write a slam poem in like 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't take me very long in those situations. And that happens a lot. Like even if you're forcing yourself to write a poem, usually that voice is going to take over and pretty much guide your hand, is how I always called it. When it comes to writing fiction, I have a very thorough process, and it still happens. So, I have the initial ideas, and then I usually take 2 to 3 weeks to just not even write anything down, but just think about it and get those images in my head, those pictures, and start thinking of words to describe them. And then I start writing an outline, and I try to be as thorough in the outline with everything I thought over the last few weeks. And then, your goal as a writer is to stick to your outline. But that never fucking happens, because you get 2-3 chapters in and suddenly the story has a life of its own. Characters that you never created come into it. You get new ideas that's not going to fit the outline, and you're either going to just roll with it, or you're going to try to completely remold your outline. I tend to just roll with it and try to get back on track to the outline when I can, because fundamentally the important part is being at the end. So if you can get back to the end by the end, then in my opinion, you've written a pretty good book.
Well, and now my unfinished latest, story that I've been writing, which hopefully will end up novel length at the end. What had happened with me is the process was I got an idea one night. I sat down, I started writing, and then I got like 3 or 4 chapters out. And then at that point saw where the story was going. And then I wrote like an outline for, how it was going to go to the end. But then even when I got back to it, like you said, you write this outline with all the intentions of following the outline. But then when you start writing, it goes in different directions, because you're writing and your brain is working, and the story, as you said, kind of gets a life of its own.
Yeah. Like I literally, so the novels that I plan, I've got an outline for like 12 books, and I've written the first book. It's called Myths of Elithrin, and it's basically about a couple twins, and they each have their own issues. Literally, in this book, I had developed over the course of 7 years, I think it was like 192 characters. So as I was going through the outline of the first book, I think I just somehow managed to create about another 20 that were actually vital to the storyline, that were never in the outline and never in my initial creation. They just popped in. It's one of the things, like, to me, it's always been like this unexplained mystery of writers, like real writers that can somehow tap into this essence of creativity. I've often marveled at how our science fiction was speaking of things decades ago that we're learning how to do now. I think that this creativity, it speaks to an essence. It speaks to maybe a universal need for explanation. So, I understand that people are going to be like, the raging atheist is saying he believes in God. No, I'm not saying that at all. But I think that there is this creativity that we need and we seek, and some people have it more than others.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point, because what we were talking about a few minutes ago about how the story takes a life of its own, and the ideas just kind of flow out of you. That would be another thing that theists would say, oh, well, where are those inspirations coming from? It must be.
A lot of them would say that they're coming from Satan.
Well, as far as for you and I, because we're atheists, they would say it's coming from Satan. Absolutely. Hey, were you able to pick something else out of your book there that maybe you could share with us?
Yeah. This is a short poem. I actually won some awards for this poem. It's just simply entitled ? I think I've read it before on a stream. Short and sweet, and deals with some butt fucking. So you gotta love that.
Okay.
It says, be not afraid. The land is true, and worlds are what we make them. If God was here, he'd look around, and then he'd start forsaken. He'd see bleeding sheep and crackheads as they're baking, elected slave owners destroying those awakened. He'd see all of his children with their own forms of hatred. He'd probably disappear because he couldn't take it. These times are dangerous, and I don't know if we will make it. Just look up and pray, hoping he repays it. Don't be down, because I say that it's okay if We take this message to the corners and relay it. There will be no more death, no more drugs, no more thugs. There will be no more racist propaganda or pedophiles getting nuts. This world is our world, and that's all that's up. We only get what we make. Why make things suck? Ignorance is bliss and always enough. We continue to sleep, dreaming we're tough. Getting fucked by our leaders, straight in the butt. But still we all sleep. Waiting for what?
Awesome. I feel like now it sucks because because as you know, I'm missing the thumb on my left hand, so I can't give you the double snaps. I can only take one snap at a time.
I wish my throat was 100%, because I can't get the correct voice inflection down, but it was close, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It could have been a bit slower.
Awesome, dude. Yeah, I can. If you had your full Nakasuchi voice, I can imagine how it would have been even better than it was. But we talked about this. I think on Discord the other day, we were having a one-on-one conversation, and I had said to you, because of these changes that you and I have both, recognized in ourselves, like I've told people, if you went back and looked at some of my interactions on YouTube, some of my comments and, dealing with people, you even though I didn't identify this way, you would say I was an anti-theist. Mm-hmm. And you yourself have talked about how, you're getting away from the anti-theism to, just to be an atheist and be more accepting of other people's beliefs. And I said to you the other day, the poem that I shared with you on one of your streams called The Tooth Fairy, there's a lot of anti-theist ideas in that poem of mine. And I said to you the other day, well, yeah, I guess I'm thinking now where I'm at, I don't think I can share that poem anymore because of, the anti-theist ideas that are in it. And you said to me, well, no, you can still share it because that's part of who you were. And it's, still telling the story of how you used to think and everything. Mm-hmm. But talk about that a little more, about how you can go through changes, but you can still share your ideas from the past, to tell the story of you.
Yeah. Like I always wonder about that. And I got people stomping upstairs. Holy shit. I always wonder about that when I started sharing some of my poetry on my page, especially as the channel has grown, and more people are watching, and they're coming to see the Raging Atheist, and they want to see the Raging Atheist rage. And I'm going to read a poem that reflects former God belief, like I just did. I obviously still believed in God when I wrote that poem. And, it was a thing, like, do I want to do that? And I thought about it for a long time, like really, really thought about it. And I don't share my poetry too often on my channel because my channel is not a poetry channel. But I think my poetry is a reflection of myself. So I do sometimes share it, sometimes individual videos, sometimes in a live stream. But I ultimately came to the conclusion that the best way to show my claims of what I used to be is to read that old poetry, to show you, yes, I had God belief. Yes, I was a Christian at one point. Yes, I was a Native American spiritualist at one point. Yes, I was an animist at one point. Although I always called myself an animalist, but I'm learning correct terminologies. And at one point, I considered myself somewhat polytheistic. In the Native American religion, we believed in Wakantanka, but we also believed in the ancestors, and the ancestors is what I focused on. Me and Allie had that conversation. So I want to be able to show that, I'm making a new video, a second video on my fiction tattoo, and I'm speaking to that also, like, now that I'm not an anti-theist, now that I do recognize that this tattoo is very offensive, am I going to change it? No, it still reflects me. It still reflects coming out of that hatred that I used to have in my theism of gay people and black people and everybody that didn't believe in the same shit that I believed in. That's what that reflects. Now, I can keep it, but I can add on to the story, right? So I think as long as you're still showing who you are now, that it's actually very healthy to show who you were then. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's interesting how you put it as far as like I run into this a lot too as an atheist, and you're having a conversation with a theist, and they want to, well, you were never a believer, what are you talking about? You can't be where you are now if you ever believed, and then if you share some of your work from when you were that, it's kind of almost like a contemporaneous note, showing that, hey, this is what I was writing. This was where my creativity was coming from at this time in my life. And that's just proof positive that you're telling the truth about where you were at that point in your life.
Yeah. And especially like, if I could have like recited all of my wisdom poem, which I'm still very disappointed I couldn't recall it today. I speak about prison, and I speak about going to prison often and without shame. And people are often like, why do you admit that? And I'm like, why wouldn't I? Why am I going to hide who I am when that thing is what made me who I am? Why do we run from things for shame? Why can't we be proud of our mistakes like we are of our successes? It's those mistakes that teach us more. And that's become my philosophy in life. And I'm not going to run away from it. All the mistakes I made as an anti-theist with stupid ass claims, I'm not going to run from that. I'm going to look at that and tell you where I'm at today. That's my goal, is just to be honest. And honesty means, we change. And anybody that says that they don't, well, you're either a sociopath or you're a liar.
Yeah, I mean, that is the that's really the only guarantee of existence, is that
I mean, everybody can see this fucking fly. It is harassing me. I can't fucking kill this thing. It loves me. It wants Nakasuchi. But go ahead, man.
But no, I think I see an epic poem coming about the fly.
Yeah,
because it's been bugging you for fucking days, man.
It's been killing me.
And so, but no, yeah, I mean, that's really the only guarantee of life, is that you're going to go through change. And as you said, if somebody tells you that they don't change, that they're either lying or they don't know what they're talking about. Or
they're a sociopath. They're like fucking American Psycho, dude. You don't want to hang around with those people.
So, any other little quick poem in your book of tricks there that you'd like to share with us?
I'm sure I can find one. See, a lot of my poems, I used to play around with shit. So we'll see if we'll switch over to StreamYard so I can actually see if I'm showing you guys right. This was a poem. Let's get it over.
Yeah.
I would work with, just angles of the page where the letters were going. Very short, very sweet. But that, when I published this and the publication, it published exactly like that, because that's the poem, the way that it's written. But yeah, I'll find something. I'll find a slam poem. I know here it is. So I think I've read this one before, but we're on your channel, and people might not have seen it. So this is called The American Dream, and this is a poem that won me 3 or 4 slam competitions. This was what I would call what the fuck do we call it? This was basically what we had in our back pocket. If you hit in that 3rd round, you would have your best poems. So my best poems were Wisdom. I had another one called man, it's been so long. How do I not know that? But I can't remember that one. But I had Crossroads. I had The American Dream. I had certain poems that if I made it into that 3rd round, I felt were pretty much guarantees to win me that 3rd round. Now, usually if you're going into the 3rd round of a slam, there are political dynamics in every slam, at least there were back then, but usually you're one of the top 2, that performed that night. Not always. So usually the competition is good. You're not going to always win. Whatever poem that you're going to pull out in that instance needs to be the best poem for that audience if you want to have a chance to win. But this was one of them. And this was back during the Bush days. I think I recently changed it and might have put this one on my channel. And I recently changed Bush to Trump. So it says, I stand humble and ready. I have the gaze and my heart is beating steady. This human race is no love, but all marriage. We still have wars, so no, we're not there yet. It takes time to evolve to godly levels. It takes blood and pain to fight the devils. Life is full of all those little troubles, stabbed, cursed, and beaten. Now I'm seeing double. Life is distorted. Adjust the treble. Don't need boulders to disturb these peaceful waters. I'll just take some pebbles. And I have yet to meet a human on my level as I fight the old fight, my spirit against the devil. I don't live, but still I give to all of y'all. All of you, sorry. These words are free, and I think free is always true. We're at the crossroads. What will these cultures do? Will the many finally stand and take their lives back from the few? Am I the only one to see these colors hue? I hear God's whispers. He's whispering to all of you. He says that love shouldn't consist of only two, but this whole world is family, and I swear that that is true. It's not just black and white or red or blue. You don't need church to feel the light that glories inside you. Just open your eyes and you can see what you must do, because these old ways are from old days, and I declare that they are through. I lost to the cost of social fervor. I'm not reciting poetry. This is just a murmur. This country is full of barbarians and berserkers. Here the rich rule the impoverished and the workers. Trust that these words aren't meant to be a tear jerker, but writing them has helped me feel a little surer. No stops, I dropped that holy tablet. Yeah, the government has us slaves to their gambit. Don't smoke weed. They lock that door after they slam it. And there is no way for you to ever crack it. Don't trust me, just go ask that black kid. He'll tell you how many times he's worn their jackets. His whole family. And the only thing they did was have black skin. In this country, black has become sin. For they own our prisons by 80%. We're losing daily and society is failing. Crack babies with no food, crying and wailing. The children are lost, their minds are somewhere sailing. And all the homeless in streets with arms flailing. Self-built walls are high, too high to try scaling. If this human structure is a buffer, then I say that it is failing. I should know. They say that I'm the fail king. And you can only fail when there's no giving, but only taking. And all the drugs that have our brains baking. What is this hatred created by our making? How can you love today? Yesterday you were hating. Are you scared that finally we're awaking? Are you afraid that now we are awaking? People sleep too deep, but eyes are coming open. People tired and wired from constant doping. In the wake of 9/11, all Americans are still coping, horrified as we watched our armies locked and loaded. Through my study, their lies have been decoded. I beheld a pale horse. It was our leaders that wrote it. And that election, yo, Bush, he fucking stole it, showing us that our freedoms are all broken. These words are written, but it's power when I spoke it. There is a circle in life, and that circle can't be folded. Do you really think it's changed with all the power that they're holding just because they wore a smile every time that they have told it? Gullible Americans, all of us are cold kids. Gullible no more, I stood brave as I told it. Remember the dream, take it and then hold it. Remember freedom, hold it close and don't let go, kid. Freedom's inside you, so it's you that can bestow it. Freedom's in all of us, so it's us that can bestow it. And I stand humble and ready.
Wow, dude. I got fucking chills, man. I wish I'd known you during that time of your life, man. Oh boy. I hope that you can come up with some new content, because I really feel like you should go back to, even if it's only here and there, you should go back to doing that, man. You've got a powerful voice, and I think you got a lot to say. And
very soon I'm going to be putting out one of my new atheist poems. I've started coming up with the background for the animations. So yeah, that's going to be coming soon.
Yeah, and then as far as like, if you were to go out, maybe do some competitions, that maybe you've been away from the game long enough that even your the old poems you used to do, there's maybe a whole new audience out there going to these slam fests or whatever they're called that haven't heard you yet. You know what I mean? Because you've been away from it for a while.
Oh yeah. It's probably been at least 15 years since I did my last slam competition, at least.
Oh yeah, then guaranteed there's a whole new fresh set of ears out there that haven't heard what you did in the past. You could do like a what do they call that when like an artist goes out after being away for a while and like kind of what is a re something tour or something? I can't think of it.
Yeah, I can't think of it either. But yeah, I wouldn't mind doing it if I could find the time just to get that old nostalgia. But like last night, I got home from work and I found my friend Saul, my old friend Saul. We don't talk at all anymore. He's far too busy, far too famous, and we had a falling out way back in the day because I ruined everything I was trying to accomplish. But I saw like I've watched his career, and I saw him blew up, and he signed with Rockefeller, and his music never really took off because people just couldn't really understand it. Although I thought it was brilliant, it was different. But I found last night where he went and did some new poetry at as a featured artist for the Toronto finals going into nationals this year. This was just from a couple months ago, and he did 2 new poems that just blew me the fuck away. Like it was better than anything Saul Williams has ever done, and they were long poems. Like in a slam, you're trying to hit 3 minutes. You're not supposed to be able to go over 3 minutes. Some of my poems I had to leave out stanzas just to hit that 3 minute mark. These poems were easily 9-10 minutes a piece, and you didn't want to stop listening to them, and they were powerful. And I put them on my Discord. I put it on AR's Discord. And he still got it, and he found a new voice, and it has inspired me to maybe give it another shot. I don't think that I'll ever make it to that nationals that I didn't make it to when I was 22, 23, whenever the fuck it was. But maybe I can go and really show the young bucks how it's done.
Yeah. And real quick too, hey, if anybody that's in the live chat right now, if you have any questions for Knock, go ahead and please post them as we kind of wind this down. I want to share a comment here. You and I got a compliment, and I love this StreamYard. You get a comment that you'd like to share with folks, you just click on that motherfucker, and it comes right up on the screen. I love it.
It's awesome.
From Tart and Snowflake. I think John is a great interviewer, and Naka is really intriguing as a guest. Wow.
Well, thank you, Tartan.
Yes, thank you so much, Tartan. And I knew that, when I had Knock on that he would be a good guest. And seriously, I don't want Knock or anybody to think that I was being condescending and just speaking for the broadcast itself. When he read that last poem, I was literally getting chills, and it's not just the content, but the way he delivers his content is. I just love it. I've told him many times before that in his prepared videos, that flavor that comes out of reading a poem. I love that about his prepared content. Yeah,
you have told me that several times. It's a balance I'm trying to strike because it's usually a fairly slow delivery that emphasizes voice stress. So some people don't like that, and so I'm trying to really save it for a more poetic script. So if I'm speaking more about humanism and trying to get into emotion and human interaction, then I definitely want to use that what I would call a slam feel. If I'm making response videos or trying to talk about philosophy as I'm going to try to start learning about philosophy, then I really want to have a clear cadence and get away from using, because another thing that I'm sure everybody notices is the Southern comes out. I'm really battling against that. I want to save that for Earl, and I hate it when it comes out in my normal speech inflection. So yeah, I think it's a delicate balance that I don't want to lose it, but I want to be careful how I use it.
Well, and it's funny because earlier when you were live talking about Brother Jay, that's his name, right? Brother Jay. I posted in the live chat, and I don't know if you missed it or not. I said, "Uh-oh, Knock, Earl's coming out." Earl was coming out a little bit, like sometimes.
Yeah, it does seem like when I'm getting into the live responses, especially like the Southern really does start to come out. I'm like, damn it, I'm sounding like a redneck. And not all Southerners are rednecks.
Here's a little comment from our buddy Les Nagy for Knock. Knock says what he thinks and delivered raw in his own words. It has power. I like his honesty.
Yeah, thank you, Les, my friend from down under. Thank you so much, Les. Yeah, that's what I try to do. I try to just be raw. I try to be willing to make mistakes. Show you humanity. I think, and I'm not knocking people, but I think a lot of YouTubers give you an image. I just try to give you me, and I think it's worked, and I think it doesn't work sometimes. It's good and it's bad, but that's life. So I think it kind of makes me a bit unique because I don't really try to hide myself. I do sometimes go overboard with my reactions, but that's also me too. If I have friends here and we're watching videos, that's how I get. I like to have fun and talk shit.
Well, and see, you can't even keep the poetry out of your normal speech. That's how I get. I like to talk shit. Like that. But yeah, and the thing is as someone who has talked to you, outside of being on YouTube or on Discord with a bunch of people around, the Nakatsuchi we see in your content and live on air, that's who you are. I can speak to that because you and I have had one-on-one conversations, on the phone and on Discord, and there's no pretense in you. You're not putting on a character when you come online. We're getting the real you for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that because that's what I try to emphasize. I'm sure that everybody makes mistakes. Everybody says shit that they don't quite mean. I think that's just life, and if you run away from it, then I think you're running away from showing something really important to people. Now, I think that if you're scripting a video, then you need to be spot on. But if you're doing these live responses, if you're going off the cuff, be you. I think that the moment you stop being yourself, people can catch that and they get turned off.
And what do we got here? We got another little comment for you from Iron Charioteer. Welcome, Iron. You got here a little late. We're going to be ending, but you can go back and watch it. At Nakatsuchi, the reason why I like you is because you have a lot of knowledge and you keep it real, genuine.
Well, thank you so much, Iron. Yeah, Iron has been with me since I was small, and I really love seeing. I have a lot of people still with me since I was really, really small, and I just really enjoy that. And I wonder, that's something I want to talk with other YouTubers, if they have that and how it makes them feel, because it makes me feel that feeling that I never had before, that feeling I never got from my family when I was just, faithful to myself and stopped hiding who I really was, and that's acceptance. And it's important, I think, for humans to have that. And I didn't have that for a long time. I was pretty much isolated, and I'm trying to come out of that isolation. And that leads to pain. I'm going to be talking about that soon. I had a rough night last night. But yeah, it's what I try to do. And the fact that I have so many that have been around for so long, like John, you were literally, I think you were on one of my first live streams ever when I had another person on. Like, it makes you feel good, and it makes you feel accepted. And that's really important, I think, especially for people outside the normal social constructs. If you're a minority, then you need that acceptance. And you need that acceptance from people outside of your minority. So as an atheist, I'm a minority in this country, and I did not get that acceptance in real life. What I found on the internet and what I found on YouTube and the acceptance I've gotten from people all over the world for just being myself, it's validating, and it makes you feel like, yes, I am okay, and I am okay to think the things that I think and to grow the way I'm growing. And you don't get that sometimes if you're isolated in real life.
Yeah, and boy, I'll tell you what, powerful words, true words, and I think that's a good stopping point to just end on that thought from Knock. And also, by the way, Mr. Sangelica is a +1 on Iron Charioteer's compliment of you, Nakasuchi. And so, why don't you take a minute? And I'm sure everybody that's here already knows, but maybe there might be somebody who watches this in the future that doesn't know where to find you. And if you could, tell us about your channel and where folks can find you on social media.
Yeah, Nakasuchi, Nokasuchi. You can actually just type that in and it'll go right to my channel now. It's pretty awesome. That didn't used to happen, so you used to have to find it. But yeah, Nakasuchi, we do a lot of conversations. John is there. Everybody, we have a lot of fun. I do edited work, and I am now working for a campaign for U.S. Congress. I'm going to be having a lot of that on my channel. And yeah, just really trying to grow. I'm really trying to stop being the toxic anti-theist that I was and be an atheist that can be a true representative of a growing community of free thinkers. So that's where I'm going, and I appreciate you guys coming and helping John, and spread the word about this channel. I think that this channel is going to be something special. I really do. I like this format, John.
Thank you for that, Knock. Yes, I am the Amateur Conversationalist, and you can also find Nakasuchi. He's on Twitter at Nakasuchi, and I'm going to be doing hopefully once a week or maybe 3 times a month on this channel. As most of you already know, I do a Saturday night stream on the Great Debate Community channel. And then starting this week or possibly next week, whenever we can work it out, I'm going to start doing on Wednesday nights on Nakasuchi's channel. So I want to thank Nakasuchi for being here. I really love this conversation. I love everything about Nakasuchi. He is my brother from another mother. And thank you all for being here. And we will see you next week.